What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about semi-finished compost. How we use it in the garden, the benefits of using it in the garden, how to use it properly, is there any ways to use it improperly, all of that and more. We're going to talk all about semi-finished compost because if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you will know that I love semi-finished compost. In fact, I love it so much that it's one of our pillars of an autopilot garden. Now, if you're totally new to this channel, you don't even know what an autopilot garden is. Well, an autopilot garden is a system that we've set in place so that we can basically garden hands-free. Our garden grows for us, so we don't have to really slave away and work in the garden ourselves. The garden kind of is just put in place, the systems are put in place to work for us, so we don't have to work for it. And I love the idea of an autopilot garden. So if I love an autopilot garden, I also love semi-finished compost because it does so much work for us as gardeners. So what is semi-finished compost is the first question, and that's the one that I want to touch on first because it's if you don't even know what it is, it's really hard to understand why it's so amazing. So semi-finished compost is, as the name implies, it's just unfinished compost. There's no need to complicate this any further. It is simply compost that is composting but isn't composted. It's somewhere right in between fresh and finished. And that's what this is. So this is our 2-bay compost pile, and we have a fresh pile and a finished pile. Now the thing with the fresh pile is that we continue to pile stuff up all year long until the bay is full. This could be things like wood chips, grass clippings, leaf mulch, tomato plants, food scraps, whatever. And so we continue to pile this stuff up. Stuff has continued to compost throughout the season, even as we're adding fresh stuff. But at some point, I want to tap into it. At some point, I want to use it. I want to use it on the garden so we can unlock all the benefits that it can provide us. So what I'll simply do is I'll simply pull aside, as I've already kind of begun here, I'll pull aside the unfinished stuff, the stuff that is really not even begun breaking down. This is usually either really thick stuff that's like really hard to break down or takes a long time, or stuff on the top, the shell of the compost pile, if you will, has a lot of this kind of twiggy stuff. But underneath is the magic. Underneath is where you start to get stuff that's been breaking down. It's gotten a lot hotter, it holds a lot more moisture, and it starts really breaking down. So get some of this stuff out of here and you can check this out. Look at the color of this, right? Now this we're starting to talk about semi-finished. This is getting very broken down. This is starting to get very punky. It's starting to hold on to moisture, and there's like pill bugs and other composting insects here that are breaking this stuff down. And so this is starting to turn into semi-finished compost. If I continue to dig even further, you'll notice, we have a lot of this layer here. This was some mulch that we didn't end up using on the garden. It wasn't really the quality that I wanted to put in the garden, so we said, it'll still break down, let's just throw it in the compost pile. So I've got a lot of this. But if you continue to go down even further, you'll reach some of this other stuff here at the very center of the compost pile, which is basically dirt at this point. This is actually starting to break down. This is truly, you can see my hand, there's a lot of actual compost there on my hand. So semi-finished compost is simply a unfinished compost. So how can it benefit you? What are the benefits of a semi-finished compost? Well, the reason why I love it so much is because it's a hybrid between mulch and compost. So if you look at some of the benefits of mulch, it can protect the soil from the sun. It can protect the soil from evaporation. It can insulate the soil from hot days, actually keeps the soil cooler. It also, because it holds in moisture, it also helps to keep the soil cooler because moist soil is cool soil. And so it helps to protect the soil. It also helps to suppress weeds. So it actually will smother out weeds to reduce competition for the plants that you want to keep, that you want to grow there and keep in the garden. It also has all the benefits of compost, which is that it has lots of nutrients. It's actually breaking down the organic matter into nutrients for the plants to use, the plants in your garden. So it has some nutrients. It also has, it has with it homes for beneficial bacteria and fungi. It has a cell structure that can kind of act as like a porous structure for those insects to call home. It's not just dirt, it's not just soil, it's not broken down completely yet. So there still is a lot of benefit to soil microbes, soil bacteria and fungi to actually feed on them and call those home. So, with semi-finished compost, you get a hybrid of both. Now, it's not finished compost, so it's not like the best growing medium. It works better as a mulch because it provides some of the nutrient components of a compost while still providing all the benefits of a mulch. Now, if you wanted to grow right inside of a semi-finished compost, it probably wouldn't do the best. The reason why is because there's still a lot of structure to it. It still is not completely broken down yet. So I would never just recommend throwing seeds in here because it's not broken down enough yet to really be a growing medium. That's really where it excels as a mulch, because I can throw it on top of our garden in a thin layer, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches thick, and it provides all the benefits that a mulch would without really being a true mulch. It's compost at the end of the day. So the intended purpose is for it to completely break down, and then it's going to continue to feed my plants. But then also the layer that's completely broken down will act as a fresh growing medium for you to grow plants. So I love, love, love semi-finished compost. Now, can you use semi-finished compost too soon? The answer is yes. You can use it too soon, and it's really hard to use it too soon because you'll know what too soon looks like. Too soon looks like this. Too soon is like basically just twiggy stuff. If it's really twiggy and it's dry and it's crunchy, it's too soon. Now, anything past that, it's not too soon. If it has a dark color, if it's damp, if it's kind of punky and spongy, if it has compost mixed in with it and you can kind of rub it off on your hands and like some dark kind of muddy color comes off onto your hands, that is absolutely usable in the garden. So you can't really use it too soon. It has a lot of wiggle room. You can't mess it up. A lot of people fear messing things up in the garden. And one thing that I love is having stuff that is very difficult to mess up. It's got a lot of forgiveness to use in the garden. Now, another question that gets asked is there something that should I not add something to a semi-finished compost? The answer would be anything that you wouldn't add to compost. So I wouldn't add something like, dog feces, cat feces. I would not add fatty things, salty things, processed foods. I really would keep those away from a compost pile, and so I would not add those to a semi-finished compost. Now, the follow-up question to that is, Luke, how long does semi-finished compost take to basically use in the garden? And that's another reason why I love it so much, is because you can use it so much faster. If a traditional compost pile takes 3 to 5 months to completely break down to where you can use the compost in the garden, you can use semi-finished compost in like half the time. We're talking like 1 to 3 months, depending on how often you flip it, what's in it, like the materials that you add to your compost pile. It's going to be ready so much faster because it doesn't need to be complete. You can just use it semi-finished. So you can actually create so much more of it. I find this is a huge advantage for those living in like a city or an urban environment that does not have tons of land. You can't generate tons of biomass, tons of composting material. A lot of you struggle with that. And a lot of you write in saying, Luke, I only have enough material to maybe create like a small little compost pile, if that. And by the time it breaks down, I almost have nothing left to add to the garden. What can I do? The answer is semi-finished compost. Semi-finished compost is such a solution for you because I can take this massive pile and I can guarantee to add about half of this pile right to my garden right away. Now, it will shrink a lot more as it breaks down. It will definitely shrink a lot more, but it frees up this space for me to generate a whole nother pile that I can then continue to break down. I can use it so much faster, meaning that I can really churn through it a whole lot faster as well. So massive, massive benefits there. And the final thing I did want to mention is, because I talked about the benefits, I talked about what it is, I talked about why we use it, I talked about how you really can't mess it up too much. The final thing that I want to touch on is, when you're using it in the garden, the times that are best. So semi-finished compost for us, we will use anytime we need the beds to be topped off, anytime we're cycling through beds. We will use semi-finished compost in the spring, and we'll use it in the summer as we're transitioning to some like late summer, early fall crops. And then finally, when we're putting the beds to bed for winter, it's a tongue twister. When we're putting the beds to bed for winter, we will use some semi-finished compost there as well, because it protects the soil through winter. It actually will insulate the soil, and it will continue to break down through winter, basically guaranteeing by spring we have some beautiful fresh compost for the plants to use. So it is a total win-win-win all around. It's amazing stuff, and I would highly recommend trying it. One additional benefit that I thought I'd mention, is that if you let compost go too long, compost has, it has a life expectancy. As it begins to break down in weather, the particle size gets smaller and smaller and smaller as it begins to break down. And so, when you have a compost that is finished, it needs to be used right on plants to see the best benefit, or it needs to be protected. Like, you need to actually cover it with a tarp so that rain and snow and other types of precipitation can't wash out nutrients from your compost. However, a semi-finished compost, because it is semi-finished, it still has all that locked potential right there. So there's really you don't have to worry about all the benefits being washed away super quickly. You'll notice in this pile here that there's so many levels of finished compost. There's stuff that's just starting and stuff that's completely finished, and there's like completely broken down, and everywhere in between. It's such a spectrum of compost that for me, I don't have to worry like, oh, I should tarp this right away because I'm going to lose all the benefits. I don't have to worry about that, because sure, I might lose a little bit, but there's other stuff breaking down that's continuing to give me those benefits. So it's constantly in cycle. The only time when the potential runs out of this is when it's completely broken down and it needs to be used as nutrients for plants to grow in. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all later. See ya. Bye.